No? Hey, there we go. All right, Doge safes. Who cares? Good news. I added like a bunch of demos to this last night, so hopefully I stay short. Usually I'm about 20 minutes, so we'll go with it. Who am I? Well, I'm just an InfoSec guy, just like anybody else. Wow, that's bad. Okay. Okay, so I'm just another InfoSec guy. I got a bunch of certs, collect them. I'm almost A through Z almost. But I don't like crack safes professionally. I'm qualified by, I own a bunch of these and I do lock sport and this is fun. But I do like to take things apart. I do like to avoid warranties. So what are we going to talk about? Well, obviously there are no Doge safes. So we're going to talk about covert entry of electronic safes, mainly in the sub $1,000 category. They're not great, but they're more to the point, they're everywhere. People use these, they rely on them, both personal and business, for a bunch of reasons. And what's the point? Because these safes are everywhere. Amazon, right? Like, hey, safe. It's a great Christmas gift for my daughter or son-in-law who don't like to use banks to save their money. Like, of course, put it in a cheap safe. I was looking something to use as a after-hours key pickup for customers. This was perfect. With holes on the top and bottom, I bolted 3 of these safes together. I do wish I had a full keypad. 4 buttons work out. So, how did I get to doing this talk? Was basically like I had this client, I had this safe, and it basically came up as like, well, you've got the certificate authority and these important stuff. Like, what are you going to do with this? Because you're going to have it offline. Where's it going to go? And they were like, well, we're going to put it in a safe, in the storeroom next to the manager's office. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. So I'm like, well, can I see it? And they're like, yeah, check it out. I'm like, okay, well, you think I could try to open it? And they're like, sure, give it a shot. You're not gonna. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's try. And then this happened. Oh, yeah. So that didn't work so good. Yeah. So, right? Why does this work, right? Like, well, the locking mechanism on these inexpensive locking electronic safes is really lacking. And obviously, the safe wasn't bolted down. So, it's not bolted down. The stack, bumping doesn't work so good. So why does it work? On almost all electronic safes, the locking mechanism is a solenoid where you have a metallic pin and a coil. You type in the right code, activates the coil, pulls the pin down, and then something, so you're then able to actuate something to open the safe. So this should be an action. Not really exciting, but you type in a code, pin drops, and then you can move the handle to open the bolts. So the important thing to see here, in addition to how it works, hopefully if I hurry up in this video, is that that pin moves freely. It's just a spring holding it in place. It doesn't lock in the locked position. So this is something we can exploit. So this allows us to bump the safe. So dropping the safe allows the inertia of the locking pin to carry it into the open position. If we turn the handle correctly, we can just bypass the locking mechanism. This works on like so many safes. We got 5 of them here we can play with. But again, bolt down the safe and the bumping attack doesn't work. So, well, we bolted it down, right? So we're good, right? So, what else is wrong? Well, openings, like, that pin, right? It moves freely. So if we can get at that pin, we're golden, right? We can just manipulate it. So, hey, they're like, well, the safe, we'll bolt it down now, so we're good, right? I'm like, well, but it doesn't have a key. You know, we don't have an override key, and there's no batteries, so you're not going to be able to open it, right? So I shimmed up a file folder, but I don't know, 10 minutes later, and we're just going to go find that little pin. Hurry up, Jeff. I should be more skilled. Hurry up. There you go. You open the safe. So again, as you can see on this, there's that little white square up in the top left is an opening that they created to allow the batteries to provide power to the circuitry. So, you know, of course, you know, 3 wires is going to need like a 1/2-inch size hole to get in there. So, you know, that allows access to the pin. So, you know, we shim up something, move it in there, and we're good. So before this, you know, kind of how I learned about the little locking mechanism was I bought this safe, this sensory safe G1459E, and I'm like, hey, I bought it so I could keep my guns, you know, in a safe place, so like my kids, like when they get to be teenagers, won't get into it, right? Like I think that's what people want. So I find out, like, you know, hey, I'm gonna just open this thing up, get down to the basement. It's great. Take the door off, look at it, and I'm like, wow. And I see you saw the locking mechanism. It's like, wow, this is cheap and bad. Like, but safe wasn't cheap, but man, the locking mechanism not so good. So in about 5 minutes, I figured out, like, hey, if there's a screw hole in the front of the safe where they did to mount the keypad, it goes all the way through, and it's like an inch away from that locking mechanism. So we remove the screw, stick a coat hanger in, find the pin, and open it. And now realize, like, this is brand new. Like, I just opened the box. Like, I just spent, I don't know, $600-700 on this safe. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. Like, so, like, what do? I call the company. I'm like, hey, this is a problem. Like, you know, this is really bad. Like, you probably have like lots of these. This is Amazon, right? They're everywhere. You know, and they're like, oh, we'll get you over to engineering. We'll finally get somebody. You know, I had to call about 3 or 4 times to get them to transfer me to somebody who dealt with the actual safes. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get that fixed for you. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and talk. This is what's happening on the inside of the safe. But we'll get somebody over to you. We'll get a fix out. It'll be great, you know. And like, so I go explain this problem. Like, you got this screw hole in the front of the door, and it allows access to the locking pin. And, you know, after about a 10-minute call with the engineer, he kind of gets it, and he's like, okay, well, we think we can fix that. We'll draft something up and send it out to you, and then, you know, let us know what you think. So they send me this. Like, okay, all right, like, I don't know if that's going to fix the problem, but okay, well, it's like with this locking mechanism, but all right. So I install it, and it's like, hey, look, it covers the one screw hole. But I mean, there's nothing else wrong with this, like there's any huge holes down at the bottom where the keypad comes in, you know, or you know anything else. So of course, no big deal. So I ended up making my own fix, right? Like ended up bending up some stainless steel or whatever, and you know, installed mine. A little better, makes it a lot harder to get that access pin. And this is really what you're reduced to. I mean, sadly, like if you own one of these safes in the sub $1,000 category and you expect it to secure anything, you pretty much have to kind of like reverse it and like fix it. Right? But you know, we covered it up, so we're all good, right? With this safe. Not actually. So one of the things these safe vendors do is, like, you know, if they have a key override for their locking mechanism, if you forget the code, right, you have to be able to get in, you have to be able to set the code. So what they do is they create a little button, and they put it on the inside, and then you hit the button, and it blanks the code, and you enter a new code. That's, you know, it's really convenient, you know, if you forget the code. But the problem is they put these buttons in places that they think are, like, inaccessible, like the jam of the safe. Like, no one, and you know, it's like, hey, this is this one safe. No, all these safes do this. They're all over. Put in the jam, this little red button. They must get a really good deal on them because they all seem to be the same button. and, it's inaccessible, right? Or you just shim up a piece of metal, stick it in the safe, hit the button, make your own code, and open the safe. And again, I need to be more skilled. This is a windshield wiper piece of spring steel bent to a 90 degree. Really complex tool. Oh, okay, enter your code. Okay, let's just, I was like, oh, I take this out, now I can open it here. There we go. That's all better, right? So, right? Since locking mechanism is so good, we got these reset buttons, like why not supplement them with a key override where we use like cheap wafer lock, right? That'll be good. Just use a wafer lock, and that'll be better than a 4-digit pin because no one's going to be able to open a crappy wafer lock. Now I do feel bad about this. I really suck at lock picking. Like I like to talk about it, but I am not good at it. So this takes like 40 seconds, and I thought I could make some joke, but I'm not funny. But ultimately, you've seen someone open a crappy wafer lock before, I'm hoping. And if you haven't, this is the skill required. Put a tensioner in and jiggle something. And then it opens. So it's frustrating as a consumer that, like you could do everything. You can put like really thick metal and big hinges and conceal them and all this stuff. And, actually you might even do good things with the electronic lock. And they send stuff to bolt it down and tell you got to bolt this down for it to be secure. And then they put a $2 wafer lock that overrides the whole mechanism. And that's the case with this. But there are other problems. So with these electronic safes, generally speaking, they have mechanisms. So if you bought the safe at a garage sale or, whatever, picked it up on eBay, and you don't know the code, or you don't have a key, we can get you one. You just provide us the serial number, right? And then so as the attacker, if the serial number's on the outside of the safe, they'll authenticate you because they'll make you fill out a form and fax it in and have it notarized. Because that's a great authentication mechanism. But then usually, for a fee of $5 or $10, $20, they will ship you a key, or if you're one of the lucky ones who has a electronic code that is like factory set and cannot be changed, like they'll send that to you. So good news, it'll bypass everything else. So what do you do if you got one of these? Because odds are you probably do. Contact the vendor. Some care, some don't. Like I said, CenturySafe cared. I mean, they tried. I think they just were in a situation where it's like, we're not going to recall, 10,000 200-pound safes, that cost $600. So, but you basically, what you end up doing is reversing it. You got to cover the holes, open, you basically open the thing up, take the door off, look, and see. Does it have holes? Does it, bolt the thing down, for God's sake? You basically have to fix it yourself. But now you know all the flaws that I know about. So I bought a new safe last year, and the goal was I was going to demo it at DerbyCon, and I'm like, sweet, right? And so I take the door off, and I'm like, oh man, they changed stuff. Like it's not like that crappy. The mechanism's a little better. Like they did stuff. They made the pin, the solenoid pin, in the shape of a spool, so you can't like just kind of tension it and drop it. Like now you have to hit it when it's perfect all the way down, and like they changed the orientation, so now you have to drop it on the front of the safe. So like, man, that makes it awkward because you're going to break the handle or the keypad or something like that. So what am I going to do? How am I going to demo this? So they fixed it, right? I like this one because they're like, hey, I used to use a bank safe deposit box, but now that I found the safe, I don't even need to do that. I keep all my customers' documents in here. It's great. So you need a book, and this is an N50 neodymium magnet. The book is really there for the preservation of the safe. Not required, but you'd have to drop it on the front of the keypad, which breaks it. And as you will see, if you go over to Lockpick Village, it's broken now. Put the magnet on, drop the safe. The magnet helps us. Yeah, so they made it really hard, right? Like to time it so that the handles, and even if you were dropping on the face, you'd have to like turn the handle in that down position. It would be really hard to do. But, you know, the pin still has to respond to the solenoid. It has to be magnetic, so we win. So good news is I'm ahead of schedule because I've rambled on up here for a while. But got the grand finale. It's exciting. We have all of these safes here. You can come play with them. We've got metal to shim. The reset button, we've got, obviously they're not bolted down, so we can bump them all, and you know, we can have some fun. So I invite you to come over to Lockpick Village, and we can play. But here's the 3 that I bought for here. This one's great. Watch this. Yeah. That was, this came out of, I want to point out these 3 safes. I bought these because everybody was like, you're just picking on Sentry Safe. So the first one's a stack-on, the second one's a Paragon, and this last one's a First Alert. So just so we, like, to be clear, like, it's not like only Sentry Safe has bad locking mechanisms. Everybody has bad locking mechanisms. And I'm really sucking at this. There we go. Don't worry, when you go to try to do this safe in Lockpick Village, you will get it like on the first try. I don't know what my problem was there. So again, reverse it. Bolt it down. If it doesn't have holes to bolt it down, make holes to bolt it down and bolt it down. You got to reverse it. You got to take the door off and see what's wrong with it. You know what it's got. They all have problems. Either reset buttons or openings or anything. There's so many problems. You have to find them and see if it's easy to fix. My recommendation is, if you can, before you buy it, take the door off and look and see if it's like, hey, no big deal, or I have to like gunk this whole thing up with JB Weld and sheet metal in order to fix it, which that sucks if you have to do that. And then the safe might do what you expected it to do. Well, thank you for your time. I want to give special thanks to the people who've done a lot more in this area than I have, Deviant Olin and Mark Weber-Tobias, and all the guys at Locksport International, Tool and Fools, because, well, they're awesome. Thank you very much. Please hit me with questions, because I got this drink ticket I want to give somebody. Yes, sir. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question was, the people use Bic pen to bypass the cylinder lock, and that is correct. In this case, yeah, do people use paper? Yeah, the reality is like on a lot of these like electronic safes, you know, I really just threw a bone to doing the key override, because a lot of them have key overrides, and they use like the cheapest locks possible. The good news with those is most of those locks you can replace. Like, so if you have a crappy $2 wafer lock on it, you absolutely can replace that cylinder. You have to take the safe apart a little bit, but you know, if someone would say spend like $40 on a lock cylinder versus like $2, you'd have like a much better safe. Not unpickable, obviously, but yeah, I'm not surprised that someone opened a cylinder lock with a piece of paper. Yes, sir. Yes, like from an inexpensive perspective, no, I don't. No, I mean, honestly, that the Sentry Safe I showed, where the fire safe, it doesn't have a key override, so you have to use electronic mechanism. And if you bolted that to the floor, you know, it would work. I mean, like, you know, you're not gonna, if you can't tip it over to drop it on the front, and you don't happen to have a $40 neodymium magnet with you, you're not going to open it. So now, granted, it's not a bank vault. It is, 1/4-inch thick steel filled with plaster with another 1/4-inch thick steel. I mean, a large cutting disc will cut that thing open and yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're willing to hit it with a sledgehammer, it'll open, Yes. You're getting the drink ticket, by the way. So. Yeah. Is what? I did some research with that, like on some of them, and a lot of them it does if you bolt it down to concrete, right? Like so, if it's secure, if you bolt it down securely, it works well. Now, I'm not saying that there's no, like, you can't hit it hard enough or you can't hit it in the right place, but it puts you in a lot better situation. Again, like, if you're hitting it with a hammer, like, you're going to get in. Anyone else? Yeah. In most cases, yes. It's like a cabinet lock, just like you'd see like in a like a jewelry store or whatever, one of those glass sliding doors. Most cases, that's all it is. So you might have to do a little research and find one that's the right size, but absolutely, most of them are replaceable. Some of them are, not. But imagine the one that's made that you use the paper for a cylinder lock. That's probably, yeah, tubular lock. That's probably going to be a problem. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you.